The day my family told me to accept my husband's affair with my sister, the air inside my mother's kitchen took on the soured sweetness of frosting left too long in a warm room. Everyone spoke in the soft voices people use when they want to sound reasonable while asking you to amputate something you still use. The kettle clicked, someone set out plates with faded roses, and my mother kept dusting flour off a counter that was already clean. I stood at the far end of the island, one hand on the cool marble, feeling the house shift around me like a stage set, feeling for its light cues. I managed the night shift at Cole & Daughters, our family restaurant that has no daughters in its name, other than the myth my father liked to tell. I opened this for Aaron and Sophie before they even knew what a sauté pan was. The sign is big enough to be a story all by itself. I can carry 4 plates on one arm and a room inside my head. My job is to keep heat where it belongs, to send things out at the right temperature, to keep a dining room calm when birthdays explode and proposals fail, and somebody cries into a napkin because the scallops taste like a childhood they can't get back. I know order. I know timing. I know how to make a night look effortless for people who want to believe effort isn't part of living. None of that training prepared me for my mother saying, very calmly, "Aaron, sometimes a family has to absorb a mistake to stay whole." My husband, Noah, sat at the table with his hands folded like a schoolboy caught with gum. My sister, Sophie, stood near the back door with her chin up and eyes red, like defiance had taken a shower and put on mascara. Aunt Laura stirred a pot that didn't need stirring. My father stayed in the dining room pretending to check inventory while the kitchen did its worst work, deciding who gets to be believed. I could have laughed. I almost did. The sound in my throat had sharp edges. "Absorb," I repeated, like tasting a sauce to see if it needed salt. My mother nodded, misunderstanding my tone as agreement. "We're not saying it's right," she said. "We're saying it happened, and you are strong enough to carry the family through a rough patch. I know what happens to women who are strong enough. People build bridges on their backs and then forget to let them off." I looked at Noah, who couldn't quite meet my eyes, and at Sophie, whose shoulders squared the way a person's do when they've decided shame is a trick they won't fall for. I thought about the receipts I'd already saved, the late charges that turned up on the joint card when Noah suddenly needed gas across town at midnight, the text messages Sophie sent, long, breathless confessional about needing a friend that arrived minutes after he left our bed to clear his head. What if I don't absorb it? I asked. What if I refuse to be the sponge? Aunt Laura made a small sound like a lid settling. My mother's eyes flashed with something old. Families that survive, she said, learn to keep some things inside the house. I don't know if you've ever been asked to make peace with someone else's betrayal because it makes other people more comfortable. It's like being offered a chair with 2 legs and asked to smile while you pretend it's furniture. I took a breath and felt the weight of my body from toes to teeth. "No," I said. The word felt like placing a hot pan down exactly where it belongs without burning the counter. Sophie flinched. Noah's jaw worked. My mother stared at me the way you look at a cake that refuses to rise and blame the oven, even though you know you forgot the baking powder. We didn't fight. Fighting would have been a kindness to the wrong gods. We sat there, my family and I, while the kettle cooled back to silence, and Aunt Laura pretended the soup needed her attention. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. It was a message from Moira, my oldest friend and our day shift supervisor at the restaurant, a picture of the dessert station she'd reorganized with the caption, "I put the chocolates where temptation has to walk past you first." I wanted to hug her through the screen. I said I had to get to work. My mother said, "We're having dinner here tonight. Family only, no drama." I said, "I'll be there." And I meant it with the clean precision I use when I tell a server, "Take table 12, they're checked now." I kissed my daughter, Lily, 5, sticky with strawberries and unafraid of the world, and told her I'd be back before bedtime. She asked if we could do restaurant at home, our game where we set the table just so, and she takes our order in a serious whisper. I told her yes. It wasn't a promise I knew I could keep, but it was the kind of lie parents tell when they plan to make it true. At the restaurant, the kitchen smelled like garlic and resolve. Moira took one look at my face and grabbed me by the elbow into the dry storage, where secrets go to feel useful. "Tell me which fire to put out," she said. I told her there wasn't a fire, not yet, just a lot of people in my mother's kitchen playing with matches. "Copy," she said, switching into the professional affection we use to carry each other through rushes and funerals. "Do you want me at dinner?" "I might," I said. "Not at the table, in the room." Moira nodded. "Ghost table. I'll bust the earth." I spent the afternoon doing what I am terrifyingly good at, building a room that makes decisions inevitable. In between checking temps and walking the line and sending back a too confident steak, I called a lawyer whose office doesn't have brochures with sunsets. Her name was Petra. "I need to understand the shape of my options," I said. She didn't ask me to start at the beginning or to explain why I had put up with what I had put up with. She asked the questions that matter: children, shared assets, paper trail, any existing postnup or prenup, and whether I feared for my safety. "No danger," I said. "Just a lot of people who like to keep the peace by putting it in the wrong place." Petra said, "We can work with that." Her voice had the warmth of a good pan after you turn off the flame, still enough heat to finish the job. I went into the office and printed bank statements, highlighted charges that wore someone else's perfume, printed text messages I had forwarded to my own email with subject lines like, "This is what it looks like when a boundary breaks." I called our credit union and moved the savings I had built by knowing exactly how much creme brulee we needed each week into a trust in Lily's name. I removed Noah as an authorized user on a card he used like a theory. I pulled up the postnup we drafted the year after Lily was born. My insistence, after my father died and I learned how many men leave their wives with receipts instead of money. I had asked for a clause about infidelity. Petra had insisted on a clause about infidelity with relatives. "It sounds cruel," she'd said, "but cruelty is leaving a woman unprotected from the one violation that kills a house from the inside." I had signed. Noah had laughed and called it legal fan fiction, then signed because dinner was getting cold and I'd made his favorite. I scanned the clause and sent it to Petra with dates. "I need a process server," I wrote. "I need to do this clean." Moira knocked and slid a cappuccino onto the desk like contraband. "What do you need from me tonight?" she asked. "I'll be on the floor." I told her I might need a favor from the pastry station. "We can put anything under a cloche," she said. "Even the truth." By 5, the dining room started to warm with the sound that has kept our doors open for decades. Forks and laughter, pretending life is simple for 90 minutes. My mother had reserved the long table by the window, the one with the view of downtown that turns sunset into a mirror. She likes the table because it makes us look like a family that knows how to be seen. The host smiled a little too brightly when he told me. "Put a runner on it," I said, "and 2 extra dessert forks." He didn't ask why. He knows my face. Noah arrived first with a bouquet he must have bought in a hurry, the stem still long, the water bag sweating through the paper. He wore the shirt I bought him for a wedding we never went to. He looked around like a tourist in his own life. "Aaron," he said, with the gentle condescension of a man rehearsing a speech about how adults compromise. "We can talk later." I said, "We're always talking. That's the problem. Tonight we're going to do something else." Sophie came 10 minutes later, wearing a dress that tried too hard to look like innocence. She kissed my cheek as if she had done nothing more than borrow a sweater without asking. "You look tired," she said, which is the kind of sentence women use to make other women explain themselves. I smiled. It felt like putting a lid on a pot that had decided to boil on someone else's schedule. My mother swept in with the rest of the family, the aunts and uncles who treat wine like medicine, cousins who speak fluent whisper, and my father's chair, empty now for a year, but still pulled out as if he might walk in with a story and an invoice. The table filled with plates, and the room became a place where everyone performs being fine. Moira stationed herself 2 tables over with a bus tub and the concentration of a surgeon. Our pastry chef, Hayden, caught my eye from the kitchen pass and lifted a silver cloche like a question. I nodded once. He nodded back. Dinner went as dinners go when the truth has a reservation. The first course made polite work of itself. The second was sauced with apology disguised as anecdotes. My mother told a story about the early days of the restaurant that made my father sound like a saint and me like a girl who learned respect from the back of a wooden spoon. Noah said he was grateful for the chance to be here, to work on us, to keep the family together, using us like a Band-Aid with no adhesive. Sophie smiled like a person auditioning for the role of redeemed. Lily climbed into my lap and fell asleep with her cheek pressed against the part of me that still remembers how to be 19 and certain. When the plates cleared, I stood. My hands did not shake. I had already held enough hot pans to earn the calm. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you all for coming." Heads turned. Forks paused. "Mom, you asked for no drama. I agree. Drama is for people who don't own their choices. I'm here to keep things boring." A few cousins laughed without a plan. "So here's what's going to happen. We're going to finish dessert. We're going to go home. And after tonight, we're going to tell the truth about what our family doesn't do." My mother opened her mouth. I lifted a hand. "We don't barter women for peace. We don't ask daughters to make themselves small so sons-in-law can feel big. We don't call betrayal a rough patch." I looked at Noah and Sophie without flinching. "And we don't turn a sister into a secret." Noah's face did the thing faces do when a story is about to lose its audience. "Aaron," he said gently, "gently is a weapon in the wrong hands. Not here." Sophie's fingers worried the edge of her napkin like it might confess. My mother said, "Let's take a breath." I said, "We already have. For months." I nodded toward the kitchen. Hayden set a small, perfect lava cake on a silver charger and carried it toward us with the solemnity of a ritual. Moira slipped through the room like a rumor going home. The cloche landed in front of Noah with a polite chime. Hayden lifted it with a flourish that would have earned applause on any other night. Instead of chocolate, there was a manila envelope with Petra's letterhead. Noah blinked. "What is this?" he asked, and the room tilted, and Aunt Laura made the sign of the cross, and someone laughed too loud at another table because the sound needed somewhere to go. "This," I said, "is dessert." He reached for it. His hands, always steady around a golf club and useless around a diaper, trembled. He slid a finger under the flap and pulled out the papers like they might bite. His eyes moved back and forth, then up to mine. There was a moment, small and real, when the show in him died and the man appeared, the one who was once kind to me because he didn't yet know power could be rented by the hour. "You're divorcing me at dinner," he said, not a question. "I'm serving you at dinner," I said. "The divorcing will happen in daylight where the forms live." My mother whispered my name like a prayer and an accusation. Sophie stood, then sat, then reached for my hand, then thought better of it. I kept my voice even. "Noah, the postnup applies. The clause about family applies. The savings account is separate property. Lily's trust is funded. I will share a co-parenting schedule tomorrow, and you will not put our daughter in your mouth when you try to win arguments you don't deserve to win." He swallowed. "You would do this to your own family." "I would do this for my family," I said, and I felt the room remember that words have prepositions for a reason. For Lily, for whatever dignity we have left, for the next woman you try to talk into, thinking this is what love looks like. My Aunt Laura, who survives on etiquette the way a diver survives on air, said, "There are children present." I looked at Lily, asleep under my chin, and thought, better this than the silent version, better paperwork than pretending. My mother stood up slowly as if her bones wanted to protest. "You could have done this privately," she said. "Yes," I said. "So could you." I didn't mean it to land like a slap, but it did. She had called me, had used my secrecy as a bargaining chip. She had coached Sophie through crocodile tears in the name of family. Privacy had been their weapon. I chose to put light on the table, the same way we serve fish with the lemon already cut. Noah whispered, "We can fix this." I said. "We can fix what comes next. This part is done." He stared at the papers like an exam written in a language he'd forgotten. He looked at Sophie the way a person looks at a lifeboat and wonders if it will hold two. She would learn, as I had learned, that some boats are illusions, painted on walls, so cowards can feel brave. I signaled to Moira with a nod we invented the night my father died and a pipe burst, and the dining room filled with water and sorrow at the same time. She moved. Hayden sent out real dessert, 1 plate for Lily to wake up to, and small plates for everyone else because sugar is the bridge people use to get off a burning island. The room breathed again. The couple at table 7 proposed. The teenager at table 14 rolled her eyes at a joke her father had waited all week to tell. Life, disrespectful as ever, continued. I took Lily to the office and tucked her into the small couch where staff have cried and napped and changed their shoes while learning how to stand again. I texted Petra. Served at table. He has the packet. Next steps? She replied within a minute. Breathe. I'll file the temporary orders tonight. Expect bluster. Expect bargaining. Expect him to claim this was a mutual separation. Don't answer any statements from family without routing through me. I typed, "Thank you," and felt the cheap grace of competent help make its way through my chest. When I came back to the dining room, the table was a museum of reactions. My mother sat rigid, afraid that if she moved, the story would spill. Aunt Laura fussed with forks. My cousins pretended to check something important on their phones. Noah was gone. Sophie was at the bar ordering something sweet and strong with the affected confidence of a woman whose life is suddenly a hallway, all doors and no windows. Moira caught my eye and tilted her head toward the back hall. I followed. Sophie was crying by the ice machine. "He said he loves me," she said. It sounded as if she wanted me to give her a certificate of authenticity. "He loves what loving you lets him be," I said. "That's not the same thing." She made the sound people make when the truth is not a language their mouth speaks. "I didn't mean," she started. "I know," I said. "That's part of the problem. You didn't mean, and you did. The world will not care about the difference as much as you think." She wiped her face with a cocktail napkin that left lint on her tears. "Are you going to destroy me?" she asked. I wanted to be cruel. I wanted to remind her of every time she took something from my room without asking, every time she tried on my life to see if it looked better on her. "No," I said. "I'm going to stop letting you destroy me." "Mom will never forgive you," she said. I laughed, a small tired sound. "She never forgave herself," I said. "That's worse." Sophie squinted like I had turned on the lights. "What do you mean?" I thought of a story our mother never tells unless she's drunk enough to pretend history is a joke. My father's own rough patch in the 90s, with a woman who sold him wine and possibilities. How my mother chose to stay and call it survival. I thought about the way she taught us to set tables perfectly and never taught us how to demand the people sitting at them treat us like more than furniture. "Ask her," I said. Back at the table, the bill sat in its folder like a boundary. My mother reached for it. I took it first. "The house," I said, and tucked my card inside. She looked like I had offered to pay for her shame. Maybe I had. When you run a restaurant, you get used to the calculus of mercy. Comp 2 desserts to keep a couple from breaking up in public. Send a glass of champagne to the table where the man just whispered, "I'm sorry," loud enough for the bread to hear. Wave corkage for the grandfather who brought a bottle he carried through 2 wars. Tonight, mercy looked like refusing to be mean when I could have. I signed the slip. I tipped heavy. I asked Hayden to send a kid-sized box with a slice of cake home for Lily. He drew a smiley face on the top with a Sharpie like we were all still people who believed in small magic. Noah texted at 2 a.m. "You humiliated me." I stared at the glowing rectangle until the words softened and blurred. I wrote back, "I served you." He replied, "At our family table." I wrote, "Exactly." Then I turned my phone face down and slept the hard sleep of someone who has finally done the thing she has been rehearsing under her breath for months. The days after were a study in weather. Gusts of accusation blew in at unpredictable angles. My mother left voicemails that sounded like press releases for a broken dam. Aunt Laura sent Bible verses without context. Sophie texted twice from a number she had renamed Work in Noah's phone. Moira told me she'd seen it flash across the bar while he ordered a drink he doesn't like. The second text read, "I'm late." I stared at it for a long time before writing back, "For what?" There was no answer. She meant it, I knew, as a grenade. But grenades have pins, and I had a postnup. Petra called to remind me that no child, if there was one, would ever be my legal obligation. "We will make that clear early," she said. "And if the rumor is just pressure, we will pop it." Noah tried bargains. First it was, we can go to counseling, then we can move, then we can build something new, then we can be open, then we can pretend. I answered each with the same sentence. We will be parents, and we will be honest. He accused me of being cold. I told him he had confused temperature with boundaries. I learned things about myself I don't love. I like the feeling of being right more than is medically advisable. I can turn silence into a moat. I know how to starve a man of attention until he learns to hunt elsewhere. Therapy helped, which annoyed me. The therapist asked me what I wanted Lily to remember about this year. That I didn't set the house on fire, I said. That I opened a window. The therapist smiled in that maddening way people with clipboards do and said, "And what do you want to remember about yourself?" I didn't know. That I fed us, I said finally. That I kept the lights on. At the restaurant, the staff closed ranks around me the way ship crews do when the captain has to cut a rope that someone's fingers are tangled in. Moira ran interference with regulars who wanted gossip served warm. Hayden made a tart that tasted like relief. Our dishwasher, Jorge, stacked plates so perfectly they made a sound like applause when you carried them. It is a strange thing to be loved at work while your home learns a new shape. It kept me from drowning. Sophie lasted 2 weeks in exile before my mother folded her back into the house like a towel that had gone missing. They tried to build a narrative where Sophie was young and Noah persuasive, and I had been a difficult wife with demanding hours. It didn't stick. The city is small, the restaurant smaller. People know who asks for the check and who vanishes to the bathroom when the bill arrives. People know who clears plates without being asked. My mother learned, slowly and then all at once, that community is not synonymous with complicity. The rumor of Sophie's pregnancy turned into a rumor of a scare, and then it turned into a rumor that I had bullied her into a test, and then it turned into the truth sitting on my kitchen counter, a box with 2 pink lines that were always imaginary. I didn't ask who put it there. I threw it away. I refused to participate in theater with props. Petra moved like an orchestra conductor who had memorized the piece. Temporary orders, a co-parenting schedule that respected Lily's bedtime and my sanity, a financial disclosure that made Noah pale. The postnup clause woke up and did its job. Noah's threats turned to sighs. His sighs turned to questions about weekends. His questions turned to a text that said, "Can I come to family dinner?" I thought about the night with the Cloche. I thought about serving the truth on a silver plate and how that had been for me as much as for him. I thought about Lily, who had started calling Sunday the day pancakes happen, like it was a law. I told Noah he could come, and I sent a list. Ring the bell. Bring nothing but yourself. Do not use the word forgive like a broom, and do not tell our daughter the grown-up version of bedtime stories. He wrote, "Understood." I did not believe him, but I hoped. He arrived in a sweatshirt with frayed cuffs, looking like a man who had begun to understand he was no longer the protagonist. Lily squealed like children do when they still think time is elastic. We made pancakes that steamed like small miracles. Noah watched me the way you watch a person do a magic trick you could learn if you were not so busy rehearsing your excuses. He did not talk about Sophie. He asked Lily about school and listened like it was a foreign film with no subtitles. It was not reconciliation. It was civility, which is the floor you build when the house you wanted is gone. My mother came later, carrying a casserole the size of an apology. She set it on the counter and started to talk about the weather. I poured coffee and waited. She said finally, "I asked you to be small." I nodded. She looked at Lily, who was coloring aggressively. "I asked you to be small because I was." She kept her eyes on the window. "Your father," she began, then stopped, then started again in a voice I recognized from nights when she thought we were asleep. "I was so afraid of breaking the restaurant, I let him break me." She turned to me, and for a moment she was just a woman with a daughter and a kitchen and too many plates cooling on too many counters. "You were right to serve him," she said. "It should have been me serving your father all those years ago." We stood in that good, hard silence people earn. Then Lily spilled syrup on the floor, and we all scrambled for towels like a little crisis had given us permission to be a family again. My mother laughed. It sounded like a door unsticking after winter. The divorce itself was unromantic in the way good processes are. Papers filed, signatures notarized, a court date where a judge who had seen everything made sure we weren't inventing a child to fight about. Noah tried for grace and sometimes found it. Sophie moved across town and into a life that will teach her, I hope, the difference between being chosen and being kept. Aunt Laura still sends verses. I send back recipes. It's our truce. On the anniversary of the night I served dessert that wasn't dessert, Hayden brought me a cloche wrapped in brown paper. "For your office," he said. I opened it and found a silver plate with a small inscription along the rim, barely visible unless the light angled just so. "Never again in the dark." I laughed until I had to sit down, and then I cried in a way that didn't hurt. If you are reading this because you want instructions for revenge, I don't have any for you that will satisfy. Revenge is hot and fast and leaves a taste that clings to your teeth. What I learned to love was something else: process, documented, boundaries signed, justice boring and beautiful. I learned to choose warm over hot. I learned to serve the truth at a family meal and to eat what it asked of me. Humility, patience, the will to keep showing up for a child who deserves a story that doesn't turn her into a witness. Sometimes Lily asks about the cloche. "Do we keep magic under it?" she whispers. I tell her yes. I lift it to show her a paper she drew of our family in 3 places: my apartment, the restaurant, my mother's kitchen. We are smiling in all 3. The magic, I think, is that we mean it. Months later, Noah texts me photos of Lily at the park while she's with him. The pictures are ordinary on purpose. Sneakers and grass, the dog they always find and always name Pancake, the crooked grin that belongs more to Lily than either of us. He writes, "She asked for restaurant at home. I tried." He sends a picture of a table set with spoons on the wrong side. I tell him, "She doesn't care about sides. She cares that you cared." He replies with a heart. I let it sit there without needing to make it mean more than it does. Sophie called last week. She is moving again. Her voice had the brittle brightness of someone selling lemonade in October. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry," she said. I believed her as much as a person can believe someone who is still practicing. "Thank you," I said, and felt the words settle without sticking to a fantasy. "I hope you find a life that loves you back." She cried a little. I didn't. After we hung up, I stood by the sink and watched the light move across the counter I'd scrubbed 1,000 times. It felt like watching a room learn its true size. The restaurant goes on. Couples get engaged. Couples break up. A man brings his mother to celebrate a remission. A woman sits alone and orders fish and reads a paperback with the quiet satisfaction of someone who learned to eat in public without apology. I send out plates. I sign checks. I wipe down a bar that tastes like stories. Sometimes, on slow nights, I polish the cloche Hayden gave me and catch my reflection in the curve. I look like a woman who understands heat. I look like someone who can hold a line steady while a room finds its breath. On a Sunday evening when the light had the color of a peach giving up, Lily and I did restaurant at home. She wrote down our order with her tongue sticking out in concentration. 1 pizza toast, 1 salad without green things, 1 water with ice but not the loud kind. She placed my napkin in my lap the way she's seen me do for strangers 1,000 times. And then, without prompting, She stood at the end of the table and made a toast. "To Mom," she said, "who makes dinner, and the truth." We clinked glasses of water, and the sound was exactly right. I do not miss the storm. I miss the person I pretended to be inside it. Effortless, accommodating, married to the idea that if I stood still enough, the wind would forget my name. The woman I am now is less impressive and more useful. She carries a pen. She reads the fine print. She believes in sunlight the way other people believe in luck. She knows that love is not a discount you extend to people who don't qualify. She knows that when a family asks for your silence, you can offer them your presence instead, and then you can offer them the door. If I had to say one thing to the woman in my mother's kitchen months ago, the one who felt her family pushing her toward the small chair with 2 legs, I'd tell her this: you don't owe anyone your quiet. You owe your child a life that doesn't mistake endurance for devotion. You owe yourself a table where dessert is sweet and the only things served under silver are the things you asked to eat. The world didn't end when I chose not to absorb. The sky didn't fall. The restaurant didn't close. My daughter didn't forget how to laugh. The only thing that broke was a lie that had been swallowing us whole. When I think of that night now, I don't hear the cloche or the gasp or my mother's sharp inhale. I hear Lily's slow breathing against my chest, the steady rhythm that told me what to do. Hold what matters, put down what doesn't, and carry the rest to the sink. And because life insists on its own symmetry, last week a couple at table 12 asked if I could help them with something special. The man whispered, embarrassed, "I want to propose, but I'm terrified." I smiled the smile I save for people at the edge of a change. "We can make it boring," I said. He looked confused. "I'll make sure the light is good, the ring doesn't fall, the champagne is the right temperature, and your words are the only dramatic thing in the room. That way, all you have to do is tell the truth." He nodded, relieved. We did it under the cloche. When the lid lifted and the ring sat there like a small, honest planet, the whole room applauded. I caught my mother's eye across the dining room. She was at her usual table, hands around a cup of coffee like prayer. She lifted the cup in a salute that meant more than all the speeches we never should have given. We had learned something about light. After close, I stood alone in the dining room and listened to the ice machine breathe. The chairs were up, the floor gleamed, the kitchen ticked in that satisfied way machines do when they've done an honest job. I ran my hand along the back of a chair and felt the grooves left by years of plates and elbows and decisions. I thought about the girls my father named on the sign and the woman I became under it. I turned off the lights one by one, the room shrinking to the outline of itself, the truth still visible even when the show was over. Then I went home, where Lily sleeps, where the cloche sits on a shelf catching ordinary light, where I open the window before bed because boring air is the kind that keeps you alive. In the weeks after the papers were served, the restaurant taught me new music. Staff laughter pitched lower around me, not out of pity, but respect. The way a band adjusts for a singer who has lost a note and found a better one. Jorge started bringing me a cup of ice water at precisely 8:45, because that was when my voice usually tried to leave. Hayden began testing a citrus glaze he swore calmed arguments at table 13. Moira, who has hands like small miracles, relabeled the walk-in shelves using my handwriting so that even the celery read like a plan. Order sounds different when you've had to fight for it at your own table. Petra called on a Tuesday to say the judge had signed the temporary orders, and Noah's lawyer had agreed to the parenting plan without trying to cut it into ribbons. "It won't always be this clean," she warned. "But you force the narrative into daylight early. It likes it out there." She asked if I wanted to pursue the clause in the Postnup to the full letter. There were assets he loved more than me that could be liquidated to make things even. I imagined his face. I imagined my own tiredness. "I want enough," I said. "Not everything. Enough is revolutionary." Petra laughed softly, spoken like a woman who knows the difference between dessert and a sugar rush. My mother returned to the restaurant quietly, like a patron who had been on a trip that didn't suit her. She brought a small tin of recipe cards I remembered from childhood. her notes in a stern blue cursive. Less salt if serving to Aunt M. Serve hot but do not rush the plate. Apologize with pears. She placed the tin in my hands like an inheritance and a truce. I was wrong, she said, about how big a woman has to be loved. The sentence sat between us like a pie cooling. I am learning small is not a sin, she added, and tears made a roadmap of her face. I hugged her without telling her what to do with her hands. We did not discuss Sophie. Sophie drifted like a boat cut loose from facts. She showed up at my door once with a box of Lily's old toys and a smile that tried to pass for nostalgia. I thought she might want these at your place, she said, as if she hadn't helped teach Lily that adults can vanish. I took the box and thanked her. She peered past me like a raccoon angling for a bright thing. Are you happy? She asked. The question felt like a second audition. I'm busy, I said. Busy is kinder than happy. She nodded as if I had spoken a slogan. After she left, I opened the box and found, tucked under a rubber dinosaur, the locket my father gave me when I turned 12. It had my initials engraved wrong, ECR instead of ERC, and I loved it because it proved even the man who ran our lives made mistakes. Sophie had borrowed it a dozen times and never brought it back. I held it and thought, we all have our thefts to atone for. I didn't text her about it. Not every ledger needs an auditor. Lily adapted faster than the adults, which made me proud and ashamed. Kids are gymnasts. They fold and unfold around the new furniture of your decisions. She started drawing 2 kitchens, mine and her father's, each with a fridge and a window and a note on the counter that said, "Be good." She gave Noah restaurant at Dad's rules and enforced them with the ruthlessness of a sous chef. We don't leave plates in the sink, she told him. We wipe the table, even if the crumbs are shy. He sent me a picture of their clean table with the caption, "Crumbs are shy," and I sat in the office for 5 minutes breathing like a person who had found a life jacket in a closet she forgot to open. I kept the cloche on my office shelf, and staff began leaving notes under it before shift. A drawing from the line cook's daughter, a coupon for the hardware store I kept forgetting, a sticky note from Moira that just read, "Water." One night, after close, I found a folded sheet beneath it. Inside was a poem. Not the kind that tries to win a prize, just a list of things we had done lately that counted. Comped a dessert for a widow who ordered his favorite dish without crying, sent a staff meal to an apartment where a dishwasher's mother was sick, taught a new server how to hold a rejection without taking it home. At the bottom, in Hayden's round, hopeful print, it said, "We are the restaurant we want to eat at." There were setbacks because smugness invites them. A regular we'd served for years called me a homewrecker in reverse, a woman who destroyed a family by demanding its rules be real. I wanted to ban him for life. I wanted to flambe his tongue. Instead, I stood by his table and said, "This is not a room where we rehearse other people's pain," and walked away. He left a small tip and a big silence. The next week, he came back with flowers for Hayden because Hayden's tart had made his mother smile, and I let that be the apology we all accepted. Noah kept thinking he could shortcut the work with grand gestures, a new bike for Lily that she didn't need, tickets to a farm that made dairy look like a spa, a speech about making it right. I told him we were doing small gestures now, showing up on time, putting the toothpaste cap on, teaching Lily to say no thank you without apology. He did not enjoy the diet. It made him honest. Honest is a hard flavor for men who fed themselves on applause. The day the divorce finalized, the judge asked us if this was irretrievable. The word hung there, a chandelier of logic. Yes, I said, because the truth needed the dignity of a monotone. Noah said yes in a voice that tried to be brave and landed on tired. Afterward, outside the courthouse, he asked if we could hug. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say, "My body is not a ritual you get to repeat for your own comfort." I said yes, because sometimes the best thing you can do is give a man exactly what he asks for and let him discover it doesn't rescue him. We hugged. He cried. Small, private tears that did not ask for witnesses. I put my hand on his back and thought, here is the length of all the promises we can keep. Then we let go, and the day remained the same temperature. That night, Lily and I went to my mother's for dinner, just us and her, no cousins, no aunts, no Sophie. My mother had made pears the way her recipe card commanded, poached, forgiving. She set them on the table like a thesis. I'm trying, she said, to learn the difference between quiet and silence. I smiled. Quiet is a choice, I said. Silence is a debt. She nodded and took a pear for herself and ate it like a woman earning something back one bite at a time. Summer came, and with it the lull that happens when people eat salads and think about moving. The restaurant bathed itself in light. We started a ritual. On Sundays between lunch and dinner, staff family meal included one story from someone about the best boundary they kept that week. They were mundane and holy. I told my uncle I wouldn't pick him up drunk anymore. I turned off my phone after 10. I didn't lend money I need for rent. We clapped after each, like the room had learned to recognize a victory that doesn't shout. One afternoon, I saw Sophie through the window, standing across the street, unsure whether to cross. She wore sunglasses too large for her face, a disguise that meant anyone who knew her would spot her instantly. She didn't come in. She watched our door open and close. She watched me set a table for a couple that didn't know they were going to forgive each other over risotto. She watched Moira laugh with a stranger and make it sound like a plan. Then she turned and walked away. I didn't follow. I put a glass of water under the cloche for her, just in case she ever decided she wanted the kind with no deep end. On Lily's first day of kindergarten, Noah and I stood on either side of a doorway decorated with paper suns and let her go. She didn't look back. A teacher with earrings shaped like commas said, "She's ready," and she was. We walked to our cars without pretending we were a couple who had parked together. "Thank you," Noah said, startling himself with the softness in his voice, "for not making me the villain in front of her." I nodded. "For not auditioning for the hero," I said. He laughed in spite of himself. We drove to our separate lives and didn't need to text for the rest of the day because there was nothing to fix. Sometimes, late, after close, when the room is a skeleton of itself and the dishwasher hums like a faithful animal, I open Petra's file in the office and read the timeline I made to keep my courage from wandering. It starts with a stupid charge at a gas station and ends with a judge's signature. It looks like a recipe card written by a woman who learned that heat can be measured and managed. I don't read it because I need to relive it. I read it because it proves I can finish things. If you came here for a moral, I can only give you a menu. Pick what feeds you. Let your boundaries be written, not performed. Serve truth at a table where you can see everyone's hands. Choose boring paperwork over exciting secrets. Pay for your own peace and consider it a tip you give the future. When someone asks you to absorb, ask them where they plan to wring you out. When you're ready, lift the cloche. Call the thing by its name. Eat your dessert in the light.